Welcome to Don's Mons, the weekly talk show of the Villanova Pokemon League. This week's a bit of a different format than what future weeks will be, as it's just a draft analysis and recap. Instead of being joined like one other competitor like I will be for the rest of the season, I'm joined by three. This time I have John, Dave, and Tyler, three of the league commissioners, on board to help me out. So without further ado, let's start doing the team breakdowns.
So the first team we'll be addressing this week is Jacob Shaw's Bethlehem B-Sharp. We're going to start off with some positive feedback.
Yeah, Jacob really likes to just in general play games offensively and hit things hard before he gets hit. I've heard him say that many times. And his team does accomplish that. It's super offensive. The typing synergy is pretty good. Only Ice was a problem. And it's quick, and that goes along with being offensive and all that. So it accomplishes the job that he wants it to do.
Anyone else chipping in?
I like it too. I mean, it has good priority. It has double Sucker Punch and Decidueye and Bisharp, and nothing's over 120, but he has a bunch of Mons in that 110 range. Thundurus is 111, Azelf 115, Mega Diancie. So it's fast, and it's what Dave said, it's offensive. It's not bulky, but it will do have those quick games.
All right, does anyone have any criticism for Jacob's team?
It's really vulnerable to hazards, and it has a lot of removal options, but he does not have a team that wants to use hazard removal because it's a huge momentum suck, and his team is really reliable.
There's
not
no
reliable.
switching to knockoff besides Diancie and Bisharp. And you're not switching Bisharp with the knockoff when most knockoff Pokemon are fighting types. So that's my thing.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of everything's offensive, because then what if somebody comes along with something they get set up and they get up above, they get over all your offensive Mons, then you can't really do anything. There's not enough balance roll wise.
All right, that's about all the time we have. The next team we have up to analyze is the Canalave City Charum, Coach Sean Sanchez. Without further ado, Tyler.
John's team has a lot of good ways to play with an emphasis on bulky offense. He's got a lot of Pokemon with good natural bulk and some pretty good typing synergy, although he's really vulnerable to psychic types, among other things. And that's what I have to say. Positives.
Anyone else?
No, I like my team. I mean, it has switch insta a lot. It's not too weak to U-turn with Moltres and the Heligo resist, and Tentacruel for that matter. And then Volt Switch, it has a Gliscor, and for the Tech HP Ices, I have Chestnut as a pivot, Clef's a natural good wall. And once everything's chipped, I think Lopunny and Hydreigon are good breakers.
I think there's somebody who does disagree with some of that positive feedback, though. So, Dave, would you like to take it?
I mean, I think Lopunny is pretty good in draft, and Gliscor is great, especially as a tier 2 like we have it this year. Zong is great, but everything else, I just don't see how it works together. I think that there's holes in the defensive typing synergy. I don't think Clefable is a good Pokemon in draft. It's just not bulky enough. Maybe it works on ladder. I don't even know how it works on ladder. But there's just not. It's 70 defense. It's 70s are the numbers. 90, 90, 70 or something like that.
All right, I'm going to have to cut you off. That's about it for that. Next team we have is the affectionately named Clamp Pearl Harbor, Coach Glumac. So Tyler, do you want to chip in about them?
Glumac's team is extremely difficult to switch into between just his biggest wall breakers are Xurkitree and Diggersby with their gargantuan attacking stats, but he also has a lot of good options with Heracross and Latios, among others, with a couple good win conditions for Alligator, Latios, Xurkitree to an extent. And he also has which disincentivizes opposing setup sweepers a lot.
And I really like how, he's got offense, and he also has Roserade that can run T-Spikes, and with setup for Alligator and maybe Calm Mind Latios, it's just, if you have T-Spikes up, they're just going to get the chip damage, then KO everything.
Anyone have anything to say about it? Criticism, constructive feedback?
Yeah, it's pretty offensive, especially physically offensive, except for, Latios or Xurkitree, and maybe Roserade in there too. Looking at his team, there's some typing weaknesses that I could see right off the bat. And just the team in general, it seems like a compilation of good value low tier Mons, but I don't really see anything that stands out as a great Pokemon in Draft League.
I think personally that Glumac's one of the best coaches in the league, but I think that he mostly just chose his favorite Pokemon or Pokemon that he likes using. I'm not really seeing too much of a cohesive team here. The next team up for discussion is the Neon Genesect Evangelion. So would anyone like to lead off with some?
Yeah, I'll start it. So Pace's team is actually, he's got 3 Mons. No, he's got 4 Mons similar from last year. Starmie, Alolan Muck, Komao, and Deblade. So that's good for him. He knows how to play with them at least.
He also had Caracosta last season before I convinced him to trade it to me.
So there you go, another one. Little weaknesses. He's got a few Hazards Mons like Lycanroc and Komao, but you don't want to like use rocks on Komao and has so many good moves. But I think he can make it work.
Yeah, he's got good speed and access to setup with maybe weakness policy. He's got a good defensive backbone, I think, with Florges and Doublade. I don't really know. I mean, you got to kind of play around those a little bit to beat him. I didn't really like some of the types that he missed building. Like his only grass type is Go-Go, which is tier 5, and then he's missing a fire type. It's not the best good types, I guess, that you like. There's types that you kind of want in draft, and I think he's missing those a little bit. But I like his team overall.
Personally, I spoke with him quite a bit as he was drafting, before he was drafting. His team resembles his old team so closely that I'm not sure he has any more creative sets to pull out for a lot of these Pokemon. I think he's kind of shown everything that he knows with these Mons. So I think that he might end up being somewhat predictable, though at least his team's looking a lot faster. And I really like the Zeraora pick in round 1 because it's actually a really good pivot, and I think it works really well in draft. But yeah. The next team on the list is Don't Hax Me Please, for Zach. So would anyone like to lead off with some analysis?
You know what, I find it kind of funny that he's playing me week 1 with a name like Don't Hax Me Please.
I don't get it.
Anyone have any actual feedback?
I actually like Zach's team a lot because it's offensive at first. Like I think he drafted Volcarona and then Kartana.
And Megazam.
Megazam
was in there
but then he
somewhere.
balanced it out. Like Hippo with Hippowdon, you actually don't need a lot of types injury because that Bond can just wall stuff on its own.
Yeah.
It's just really fat.
Yeah, I like his team a lot. I like all the individual Pokemon a lot. It's weird. It's weird to have Kartana and Ferroseed on the same team.
I don't know why he drafted Ludicolo is the one thing I didn't understand.
Yeah, maybe it's just sniping Antonio.
He might have seen, yeah.
But yeah, I like it overall.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's a little bit too heavy on the ice weaknesses.
He has Empoleon.
He does have Empoleon, but you can't rely on Empoleon to tank everything, especially when it doesn't have any recovery moves. I mean, unless you're a god and like rest Empoleon.
We have a lot of teams that are like super weak to ice.
We have a lot of teams that are really weak to ground too. I think that's a running theme as well.
I have something to discuss with that when it comes up, but for right now, we're going to cut off Zach's analysis. The next team we have are the defending champions, the Ivoryton Infernames, coached by Mark. So it's a team that I think is looking very solid. Anyone have any positive feedback?
Yeah, Mark, for whatever reason, Mark doesn't really like his team. He thinks it's not his best. And mortals would be intimidated by Coco, Zygarde, and Greninja on the same team. But we're not. Or he doesn't think it's that. I don't know. I don't get it. I think his high tiers are really good, and his low tiers are perfectly respectable. I wrote in my notes, Mark, what are you thinking? This team isn't bad. The only problem I thought was maybe hazards because he's kind of forced to run like Defog, Coco, or Stealth Rocks and
spin
Necrozma.
him on lead.
Yeah, like there's
that.
weird stuff with hazards,
Yes.
but I think that the team can definitely handle it without that.
Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of like reliable recovery, which is another big thing. Because you look at Mark's previous teams, he always runs bulk, and now he's got to run like full on offense.
Tyler, you kind of agree with Mark, however.
Yeah, I agree with Mark. So Mark's problem with this team, and mine too, is he's got a really solid backbone, but his lower tier picks are just not that good. They don't really go with his team that well. And so what it's going to devolve into is Mark is going to roll up with 5 good Pokemon +1 every week. And so he's going to have a problem with the lack of team versatility, which is a big deal in draft. You can't really get away with that.
I can see that.
I have questions. Halucha was sitting right there. He has a Coco.
I thought
It would
I
work
thought
well
he
with
did
his
it.
team. I'm not sure why he didn't take it. He said he just doesn't like it, but that's a decision I really can't get
Still
behind.
can, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's godly. Why would
Mark.
you not do it? He doesn't even have to run it. You didn't run it half the time.
Yeah, dude.
You
Yeah,
did,
the
and you
end of the
still
season.
bubbled out of playoffs!
The next thing we have for analysis is the aptly named Snore Laxatives, coached by Dick. Tyler, do you have some things to say?
This team is really similar to mine from last semester's. So it has a really strong offensive core with Latios, Anti-Minotaur, and Mega Manectric. And it doesn't really care about rocks that much. I guess if he wants to utilize Vivillon, he can do that. But he can pivot around a lot. He's got a lot of good offensive options. I think Latios is one of the best picks for draft because it is such a good coverage machine, which takes a lot of the stress off of the rest of your offense if you're building a team like this.
No, I like this team because, like, at first you look at it, it's like, oh, this is just full on offensive, but he has tools to make it defensive, like with maybe Intimidate on Arcanine. You know, Premier Arena has just good defensive typing in general and can switch in on stuff. And Steelix is just naturally fat on the defensive side, so I actually like Eric's team.
Yeah, I like the Pokemon in general. I think it's got good synergy. I feel like the offense is a little bit. I mean, I want to say slow, but you got Latios and Manectric. But if those go down, which Manectric, I think it's got a terrible move pool.
Mm-hmm.
Latios is a little better, but like I think that those two Pokemon alone are going to be a little bit exploitable, because they're. I mean, they have their weaknesses, and I think in Draft League, like, people are going to be able to find them.
It's a little predictable. If, like, Manectric and Mimikyu, like you said, don't have the best movesets, so he's going to have to be creative if he wants to make this team work.
Next thing we have up are the Linden Littons, returning from a strong performance last season. Dave, you have some things to say?
Yeah, I like this team a lot. It's really fast. There's like two slow Pokemon in Cough and Stagataka, and everything else is fast. That might be like a little bit of a problem because he's got just so much like base stat total spent in speed, and maybe he won't really need it for everything. Like you want to spend more in power, and all you have is speed, and you don't really need that as much. He's got strong typing core. Only problem I can see with the typing is somebody rolls up with Earthquake and Gyro Ball with all that speed, and basically the only thing that's safe is like, I don't know, Manaphy and Serena.
I mean, he has a stack attacker, so he's not exactly fearing Trick Room.
Earthquake,
He's the one setting it up
gone.
himself. I mean, have you ever seen Space Defense?
Okay,
that thing lives and lives
all right,
and lives.
let's hope.
I'm sorry, this gets to the Don seal of approval. Is there anyone who actually has some more criticism about it, though? Because I'm really in love with this team, and I would definitely play with this team if I had the chance to.
I think it's really easy to cover the whole team with one coverage type being ground, because his only reliable ground switch in is Zarina. Because I would in no way consider Young Mega to be a reliable ground switch in, given that it comes in on rocks and loses 50%. And I don't really like Zarina. I think it's a pretty mediocre Pokemon at best, and you just can't rely on Zarina to handle all your ground types.
You guys seem to be forgetting that Savali also has an immunity to
does.
ground.
Zavali sucks. That's not a Pokemon.
Serena is a really
it's a
great.
Digimon.
It's a great counter to Zygarde. Serena is.
All right, this is devolving.
I'm not kidding.
We're going to move on to the next
I
thing.
beat.
The next team we have is Meteor Problem, the defending second place team from last season. A certain someone in the room gave it a really high score in our pre-review, so I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Finn's team. It reminds me a lot of really competent UU balance teams. He's got a really strong defensive core between Celesteela, Tangrowth, and Alomomola, especially with the regen on the two of them, and the capability to wish past to Celesteela. Gives him a really solid group of options, and he's combined that with a set of very powerful offensive Pokemon that you see on a lot of good stall teams, being Mega Aerodactyl and Mamoswine, and obviously Landawai is banned, but you would see it on those too, which gives him a lot of firepower to tear apart the balance teams that try to break through him. And then he's got some good options from his other Pokemon. I don't think any of the Pokemon on this team are mediocre at all. I think they all have really solid niches that Finn can use them for. So I think this team is the number one contender in the league at the moment.
Any criticism for
Yeah,
that?
I think his offense being Aerodactyl, Lando, and Mammoth Swine, I think that's pretty monotonous. Monotonous. I mean, you got Ground and Rock and maybe the superpower or something from Mammo, but aside from that, it's just kind of fat, like John's team wanted to be. But this one actually succeeded. I think this team is pretty darn weak to Bolt Beam. You got like Comfy and Primeape and Heatran and Mammoth Swine, but then everything else, you got to make a 50-50 prediction, and if you get it wrong, like, that's big trouble.
And then one last thing I like to chime in is that he's pretty weak to hazards. You can argue he has like defog on a lot of Mons, but unless he's running multiple defog each week, people can just set up hazards against him, and because he has a lack of pressure, they'll just keep going up, and he can't really do anything to stop it.
The next team we have is the New Jersey Joltics, one of the two expansion teams, or one of the several expansion teams to the league this year, with one of our two freshmen. Even though he's new to the league, he seems to know what he's doing, and Tyler has some good things to say about his team as well.
Yeah, I really like the offensive options on this team. I wasn't really on board with taking Thundy round 1 and Entei round 2, but he followed it up with a lot of really solid picks in the later rounds. Like Sharpedo is a really good cleaner. Rizion is pretty versatile overall, especially for a tier 4. And I'm totally behind Simisear and Crocodile. I was really happy to see somebody take Crocodile. And he's coupled that with a really solid blanket check core with Toxapex and Aggron that only really struggles with ground types, which seems to be a running theme this year. Because you can bust through this whole team with a ground type, which I think is really what holds it back.
I also looked at this team as I was preparing to help pace for week 1, and I was really impressed by the team overall. And I also spoke with Angelo about how he would use certain Pokemon a little while back before he was doing the draft, and he seemed to have some really good ideas. So I honestly think that Angelo is going to be like the self-contender for playoffs this season. I pretty much see him causing a bit of a disturbance in that division. There's going to be 5 good players in that division, not 4 at the very least. But anyone have some negative feedback about the team?
I don't know what this team is going to do to hazards, or like to remove hazards. It's not a huge deal, but I mean, you got Thundy and Entei and Simisear there too. And also, I hard disagree on Virizion being versatile. It's got like the shallowest, weakest move pool. I think it's really tough to do anything with. He's got Gardevoir, which is amazing, and it's the opposite of that. It's everything that's good about Pokemon is wrapped
All
up
right,
in
I'm going to
Gardevoir.
cut you off there. The one thing that I actually realized about the team, Pace was talking about it with me too, he doesn't really have reliable recovery outside of regen on Toxapex and a few Pokemon that can use self-recovery moves. Something like Mega Aggron would work a lot better if it had Swish Bashing support, sort of like how Chris had it last season. So there's a couple things on this team that I think would be a little bit better with some more supportive Pokemon, but I mean, I'm not really knocking what's there. The next team we have is the New York Yveltals, one of the new expansion teams in the league this year by Coach Antonio. I actually helped Antonio draft the team, so I think I want to do a little bit of a rundown. Antonio is a coach who, while having Pokemon experience, isn't one of the most skilled coaches in the league. He's more of a Smash player and a shooting game player, Fortnite player, than he is a Pokemon player. So I kind of helped him build his team with that in mind. Rain is a team with a pretty low skill floor. You can get pretty good results from a Rain team without actually being that big of an expert at the game. So I like this. I think the Tornadus pick is really good. It gives him a quick Pokemon when Swift Swim goes down. He's got many like the standard Rain Pokemon, your Kingdra, your Mega Swampert, your Pelipper. Ferrothorn also works really well in Rain. And I think on the whole that, he's got a pretty standard Rain team. He's missing some components of it, but it's a team that'll at least help him grow as a player throughout the season.
I disagree. I think it looks pretty obvious that there's kind of the Rain team that got looked up and then drafted, and so he's got 6 Rain Pokemon and then 5 Pokemon that you can kind of clearly see that Antonio just kind of went off and started drafting. I think it's going to be really tough without Ludi. I think Ludicolo is a big part of Rain teams. Nothing switches into the combination of Grass, Water, and then Ice Beam from Ludi, and especially when it's got Swift Swim, it's a nightmare sometimes. I think Rain team, with these 6 Pokemon, he's going to have the same 6 Pokemon unless he wants to dip into those 5. And that's going to be predictable and exploitable. And as always in Draft League, whoever's got a Pokemon with Freeze Dry, it's really, really tough to work a Rain team with that. And also, I think he's got the wrong Torn.
Don talked about Rain as a positive, but I think we need to look at it from the negative perspective, which is it's great that it's Rain, but like any skilled opponent who has played a Rain team before knows how to play against this Rain team. And in that way, I think Rain is almost kind of like a noob trap in Pokemon.
But you're kind of assuming that the people in this league are competent enough to know how to fight against the Rain team. I disagree for the most part.
I think we have plenty of skilled players who can take advantage of that.
Take advantage of
Can I chime in one thing before we end the Antonio?
Yeah.
When we went back to my place, he's like, "Oh, I can't wait to run Z conversion Porygon Z." And I'm like, "No, that's not allowed."
That's not
I told you during the draft. No. The next thing we have is the Orlando Oricorios. Ben as the new coach in the league, one of our freshmen. Does anyone have any feedback for Ben?
I don't really know what I'm looking at here, honestly. I don't mean to rip on him, but I think that this team is going to be heavily carried by Victini, and a million U-turns in and out again on rocks. That's really going to hurt him a lot on Victini. And then I don't see how the team comes back. And he's got what one defogger in
No, but he has rapid,
Mantine?
and he has rapid spin Excadrill, which is a good rapid spinner.
Yeah, it's one of the best rapid spinners
Yeah,
in
right.
draft.
But like,
Yeah, good. Thank you, Dave.
He has a team that wants to play offensively, but he doesn't have a lot of really good wall breaking options outside of Victini, which
and
to be fair,
Excadrill.
In sand with Gigalith.
yeah, I like the little. I like the
Extra
little.
drill and sand's pretty good, but I think it works better as an offense killer and a cleaner than a wall breaker.
And Zangoose is also
And
a wall
Zangoose,
breaker.
yeah, I did mention that, but it is kind of slow, so
Yeah.
I like the halvesy little attempt at sand with Gigalith and Excadrill.
it's a god team.
Anything else anyone wants to add?
Not really.
Yeah, I think this team, I'm a little bit more positive on this team than most of you guys. I think that, it's very, very weak to ground in particular. Mantine's really the only Pokemon that's immune, and a lot of the Pokemon are weak to it. But I think that with a couple quick patches, he has like some good Pokemon here that are always very good in draft. Victini's amazing. Excadrill with Gigalith also works really well. So I think that it might need some things to clean it up, but I think that it has the basis for a good team. The next team is the Phantom Thieves from Coach Colin, one of the newer coaches in the league. I helped Colin build this team, and we started off with a couple Pokemon that are somewhat easy to use, and also some of his favorite Pokemon. Salamence, it does a fair few things, can run physical, special. It's a threat for a fair amount of different typings. Alolan Ninetales takes skill, trick, belly drum from behind veil, and I think that there's a lot of Pokemon here that are, pretty simple to use for a newer coach getting into the league. And I think that they're very deadly options if people misplay. So I'm giving Colin, by helping him draft, sort of the room to capitalize on mistakes. I think his lower tier picks are a little bit weaker. They're mostly to accommodate for the Persona theming for his team, and also just comfort for, some of his more preferred Pokemon. But even so, I think that all of them do have some use and will come off the bench at some point this season, except maybe Dragonair, which was sort of a throwaway pick.
Yeah, I like his team a lot. I think it's going to work together with, like Don said, with the setup and the appropriate support Mons kind of holding it up. I think it's balanced enough role wise. I think he's going to be able to vary his team week to week. I don't really like. Colin's rolling in with 4 quad weaknesses, rivaled only by John Sanchez with 6. But yeah, I like it a lot.
Like you said to a lot of teams, Dave, this one doesn't have much hazard control, but I will say about Collins, his team's not meant to last. It's not supposed to be switching a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one and done, sort of hit belly drum behind veil.
Right.
Boy, I really hope that works a bunch of times.
And then when the
I'm
problem
sure
is,
it'll work
when
out
that doesn't
a couple
work,
times.
it it hurts bad, and he's just gonna.
I honestly think that Colin's going to be one of the most volatile teams in the league.
could.
He's going to have like 3 or 4 good wins where he just blows through his opponent,
Can't sleep
and then
on
he's
it.
going to have like a lot of big losses where he just can't get momentum and he just can't find a way to break through.
I'm bringing Snatch.
How do you guys think of the Sigleth pick, by the way?
Sigalith is a god
Yeah,
Pokemon.
I
The
know.
destroyer of men.
I honestly think that behind Veil too could be just as annoying as like any of the Belly Drum
With
or
sword-
any of
sword
the
power.
Dragon Dance.
Cosmic.
Yeah,
Ah!
start putting up behind Veil, and
Chanaka
it's
does it
just
better.
going to be annoying.
Right.
All right. The next team we have this season is the Philadelphia Goonian, coached by Chris Thompson, longtime member of the league and my sworn nemesis. So does anyone have anything good to say about his team? Because I really don't.
I don't think it's a terrible team. The biggest problem I have with it is all the ice weaknesses. Because he's got Garchomp, he's got Gligar, and then he's got Honchkrow and Rotom. With the grass. So he's a little weak to ice. He's also got double quad ground weaknesses with Magneton and Heatran. So like that could be a little bit of trouble. But I think the team is balanced enough role wise. I can see it working together week to week.
Yeah, I think what you said is right. It's true, but like you said about Jacob's team, if a Mon gets set up, he's not gonna have many ways to stop it after.
Crest.
What if Crest can't touch the setup? Mon?
What does
I don't- I mean,
Crest do?
right.
It takes a hit and
Crest
then it
is
just dies.
extremely passive.
Passive, what I'm saying.
Okay, but then it's
Yeah.
got to be immune to toxic somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming you live a hit.
Yeah, and we'll live
Or
You will live
enough.
one hit.
Crest
but
can
you
live
won't
a hit.
live
Enough
one.
to stall
we're
it
being
out.
hypothetical, but yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
mean-
big fear.
Right.
Anything else to add?
Should have taken Garchomp round 1.
No, I wouldn't take pick number 2.
The next thing we have is the Pittsburgh Pyukumuku by the infamous coach Dave Webb. Would you like to talk about your team a little bit, Dave?
Yeah, just a little. I think I got away with a pretty good draft. There's just a couple of like little roll repetition points I wanted to say. Because I got Mudsdale, Cobalion, and Tyranitar, and I kind of feel like those guys are a little bit similar in the moves they want to do. I might end up trading one of them for if I see something better. And then Mew and Gengar. Mew usually is running the special moves unless I want to use like Static and Will-O-Wisp and be annoying with it. And then Gengar I guess can be offensive. But I do think I got away with a pretty good draft.
Any criticism? Constructive feedback? I have some. I honestly think this is the top 2 team in the league. It's one of the 2 A's that I gave in my analysis. The only thing I really see holding it back is I don't think that Flareon is a legitimate Pokemon. And you're going to have to try to convince me otherwise this season. Because
Alright.
I helped Sammy build in Season 1.
Yeah.
And I could never once find a good time to bring in Flareon. It was just kind of dead
Like-
weight.
It's super weak to psychic types with fighting coverage. Like Megazam, look at your team. Look at Megazam. If it hits Focus Blast on T-Tar, like it's kind of everything.
But it won't hit Focus
T-Tar
Blast to
actually
Mega
lives
T-Tar.
Focus Blast from Megazam.
No,
With
after
no
some chip
investment.
damage. Yeah.
Fun fact.
But, you know,
team it's not a top 2 team.
I think it is.
It's funny coming from
and-
you.
Nah.
Based on the results today, with him being the only team with a win so far in the league. Oh, this won't go up until people know. So,
Spoiler.
but yeah, so far the number 1 team in the league in actuality. So
Yeah, it is.
we'll see how it does for the rest of the season.
What's that?
And the final team we have for you this week is the Valencia Volcarona by Coach Tyler, the number 1 coach that has never won the league or a single playoff match. So I'd like to turn it over to
Incorrect.
John because he
I have
has
won
some
a playoff
stuff.
match.
Wait, did you?
Yes, I beat Sammy. How do you think I made
Oh,
it to
okay.
finals,
Yeah.
dog?
Oh yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Talking about me for a second.
But you know, your playoff rate is pretty low, 1 and 2.
Tyler.
So,
Well, let's focus on my win rate against Zygarde instead.
all right. Tossing it over to John. Could you analyze
No,
the
sorry.
team of the second longest win streak coach?
Yeah, I like Tyler's team. It has good type coverage. It's offensive like Tyler likes to play, but he can also run balance with like Jirachi, Witch Pass, even Togekiss can run support really well. Like I don't know why he's so critical about this team. It has the tools to make it work, and he even said last season how much he thinks Mega Houndoom is good. And Dave, you don't like Mega Houndoom?
No, I don't like Mega Houndoom, and I don't really understand it's just me. I think Jirachi's good. I just don't
Right.
understand how it works, or like when you'd bring it, or when you'd bring different sets. I just don't really understand Jirachi.
Okay.
Like as a whole, and also I see kind of ice weakness with two quad ice weaknesses, and then Togekiss and even Tangela, and then maybe like a special fire move like flamethrower. Like that would kind of hurt with you got Jirachi, Galvantula, and then Avalugg and Tangela again. And I mean, yeah, Umbreon's kind of fun on paper, but I don't really think it works super well in an actual match. But like I don't hate this team total. I just it's kind of wonky, and I don't know how well I see it working together in a match. But like it's definitely doable, or maybe Tyler can patch it up with one or two trades, I think.
This team sucks. Now, I have historically not drafted the best teams, but this is easily my worst showing. This team just has no concrete game plan. It's a jack of all trades team, master of none, but I don't think you can really get away with that in draft to the extent that you can in standard play, because my team is just lacking in really strong hitters, which is not good despite having the really good momentum generation it has. That's one of the good things about it. And it also just doesn't have really consistent coverage options. Houndoom and Landorus are really strong choices, and Jirachi actually has a very wide move pool. But outside of that, I've really railroaded this team to certain coverage options on certain Pokemon, and that's a huge negative for a team that wants to play as offensively as this one does.
Okay. So that about wraps it up for all of our teams today. Thank you for tuning in, and have a good evening, or whenever it is when you're watching this,
You too,
which
Dan.
I don't really know.